It's her boyfriend Catboy? Good one. Second chance on this video by your music guy, or do you not care? What? I think that all of the... Oh, okay. Yeah, all the cultural appropriation stuff is stupid as fuck, okay? Don't care about it.
This is the statement that Destiny made in his usual persona in response to a video by ForHarriet critiquing Ariana Grande's strange but gradual complexion change in her public persona. If you came here looking for a hit piece on Destiny, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. In fact, most of the criticisms I make aren't really going to be of him or of many of his points, but rather framing the conversation on which he's making these declarative statements and putting them what I think is going to be a more productive context for a better conversation going forward. So one of the problems around the conversation regarding cultural appropriation is that it's fresh, the effects that it has are highly emotionally charged, and we don't have a lot of data but for the individual experiences that people have to parse on our own and then bring into a conversation while under the perception that we're debating our own humanity. So this is going to be my own personal attempt to reflect partly my own personal experience, but one I think a lot of people that I have known share. Now, this is a fresh, ongoing debate, and you're obviously not obligated to agree with me, and you're welcome to have your opinion. You're even welcome to express it in the comments. Don't be offended if I don't read them. I have a lot of art that I finally feel empowered in producing, and I'd like to personally get on with my life in many ways. But you're always welcome on my Twitch stream, weekdays 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, to have a discussion with me in person.
You want the ultra fucking nuclear hot take? Cultural appropriation is like the SJW version of I liked this band before it was cool, alright? I mean, you probably shouldn't be doing like full-on blackface, but like, does any of this actually matter that much? Do we really give a fuck about any of this shit? Like,
Sure, it doesn't matter as much as, say, black people and trans people of color being systematically murdered by white America, I agree. But I also don't like the potential implication that there's a minimum social impact that something problematic needs to have before it becomes problematic enough to talk about. Now, I'm not saying that that is what Destiny is saying here, but it is an implication that one can come away from this video thinking, and it can have an effect on the discourse going forward.
I actually, so I won't let this like poison the rest of the argument, but I actually would disagree with that right there. I think that there does need to be some minimum level of impact something needs to have before like conversations can happen in certain forums about topics. So for instance, let's say that I have like an ultra fucking racist ass backwards, ultra conservative fucking grandparent or something, right? Like the conversation that I might have with them might be at the level of like, we need to not treat black people as not human, right? That's going to be like the level that I work at with him. And I don't think I'm ever going to dive into like the nuances of like systemic oppression. I'm just going to focus on that level. Like I'm going to focus on that thing because anything that's like not rising to that level is probably not worth addressing until that big thing is like fixed. In terms of like understanding cultural appropriation, I think that's something where like 95% of the people that fully understand it are already going to be on board with it to some extent because you have to buy into so many things to get to cultural appropriation. You have to buy into so many things to even get to the point where you can have a discussion on cultural appropriation that it seems like kind of like I don't know if this rises to the level of like, should it be talked about? Now, like, that's not to say like I'm saying like you're not allowed to talk about this. You can obviously talk about any social issue you want. It's just nothing. I would like never focus on this in like a conversation, you know? Yeah, just because that's kind of where I'm at on it. But I won't let that like destroy the rest of the video or whatever. Okay. You do have to be careful with the argument that I'm putting forth though, because it's like, oh well, if it's not literally, if people aren't walking out and murdering 20 people using this argument, like how many people need to die before it's relevant, right? I'm not necessarily saying that, but yeah.
Forward.
He's going to kill me again.
It's definitely worth noting that cultural appropriation, percentage-wise, a much bigger problem.
You
for my
love
life because I'm a
using
privileged
black
cast Indian
people
American.
as examples for your argument.
Nice. Can you fix the delay between your monitor and your face cam? You read the title of the thread. Assault 1.56. Wait, what? Hold on. Tell me what the delay is, okay? Okay. I'm going to click X, okay? Or I guess I'll just watch the VOD. 3, 2, 1, X. What is the delay? I don't know why you guys are saying X in chat, you stupid fucks. I'm clicking it on screen. Is there a difference between me saying it and me clicking it? No delay. Oh, okay. So that guy's just... Fuck. All right, hold on one sec.
Because I don't have to deal with the more overt and, for lack of a better word, material forms of racism that other communities have to deal with. But that doesn't make the covert racism that I face okay. Now, I'm not saying Destiny's saying it is. I just want to make sure that nobody's interpreting a statement as believing that it is. With that said, Destiny, like Any other political content creator has only so many hours in the day, and I don't really expect anyone from any community to get up in a roar about cultural appropriation on any given day, given the host of more crucial issues we are living through right now. But if you're going to imply in your rhetoric, as we just saw, that cultural appropriation is stupid and that people who discuss it are by extension uppity SJWs, then maybe a clarifying conversation is in order. In the next segment, Destiny does make a statement that I disagree with, in which he addresses the responsibility of the individual when wearing a costume that may contribute to racial stereotypes.
Using sombreros and stuff like that make a caricature out of the culture they represent. What do you mean? What do you think sombreros came from? What do you mean by that? Where did the entire concept of like the fucking like American cowboy come from? Like a lot of this is like rooted in like Mexican culture and shit. There's more to Mexico than sombreros. Okay, sure, but like what does that mean? If you want to dress up as anything, you have to go and do a deep dive, fucking 20,000 Encyclopedia Britannica dive into the culture. And come on, dude.
No, I don't think you should have to do that, but you also shouldn't have to read 20,000 studies on how casual use of a racial slur in public can stoke and fuel racist sentiments in order to stop saying the N-word when we come together and agree that we probably shouldn't. And I think Destiny would generally probably agree. It's the job of those with knowledge and perspective to have that conversation, as we are now, and it's the individual's responsibility to accept the resulting prescription. It's no one's job to read 20,000 pages on their own. We have a conversation as a society about a problematic behavior and then prescribe change based on the outcome of that argument. And that argument is that when you're in a racial or ethnic group that is underrepresented in media and broader society, but aspects of your culture are represented more than the people themselves through things like costumes and stereotypes and one-dimensional representation in white-dominated media, it has an adverse effect on, say, how I, as an individual from such a culture, will be perceived and treated. When you wear a turban to a Halloween party, it can lead to me being called Punjab on the street. When you wear a bindi on your forehead, it can lead to two racist assholes in my high school gamer group asking me constantly why I don't have a reset button on my forehead. You, as a member of a dominant group, can have an influence in counteracting that effect by intentionally and consciously including people from ethnic cultures in your engagement with said cultures. And I will make the same critique of brown boy hip-hop casuals and business majors who think they have a lifetime N-word pass because they went to charter school 2 miles out.
Like, it's possible, but it would be so hard. It'd be so hard to like follow that impact. I mean, like, you have to concede that it's possible that somebody could see somebody wearing like a stupid costume somewhere, and maybe that further feels like a negative aspect of like somebody's like understanding of some culture or something. But I feel like I feel like that on like the flip side of this, that if we basically say you can't wear anything of any culture that doesn't have majority representation, I think that side is just, it feels too extreme. Like the amount of basically outfits, I guess, that have to be completely eradicated. Well, hold on. This isn't necessarily a good argument if something is too extreme. But I guess it feels like on the flip side, like the amount of like costumes, like do we never dress up then as like ninjas? Like is that like an argument against like ever wearing like a samurai or an anime outfit or doing basically all forms of cosplay? Or like any, I don't know, like it feels like basically, it feels like you're cutting out like basically everything that's not mainstream white culture. Ninjas aren't discriminated against. I mean, Asian Americans are arguably discriminated against, especially in the Chinese virus era, right? Well, that's not like something that people are derided by. I mean, it's a negative stereotype that like Chinese people all know kung fu or Asian people are all good at math or... Ninjas don't represent Asian Americans, though, right? I mean, arguably, but like... I mean, does like a person wearing a sombrero represent like all Hispanic Americans or all, I don't know if you'd say Mexican Americans? Like, I don't know.
Outside Oakland.
The argument I've heard, at least from my race class, is that over time people forget who actually created the thing first, and because white people are typically dominant, at least as far as the media is concerned, the thing will be credited to them. Okay, everybody forgets who originally created everything. Nobody gives a fuck. Okay, I think I don't know this 100% true, but like, some people say Vikings wore berets like earlier, or like fucking dreadlocks earlier than some African?
I don't know if that's true or not. I've read that a lot, but it's on fucking Reddit and shit, so that might not be true. I don't know, like in terms of like where dreadlocks first came from, or the idea that like certain things can develop in tandem across like different continents, and nobody necessarily knows who did it first or whatever. Or...
I'm sure there's like a lot of culture that develops like parallel to one another where they don't know it, but like this idea of like people like having the original credit of like who invented whatever dumb shit for is stupid, dude. Fuck, who cares? Cultures mix, societies mix, traditions are borrowed, nothing is new, everything is like derivative of something else. All art, all societies are remixed or borrowed or taken or stolen or appropriated from other cultures. Who cares, dude? Fuck all that shit.
And here we come to why it's so difficult to have this conversation. Ownership of culture, broadly speaking, in my opinion, is a really stupid concept, and we need to be smarter about our critiques. It takes a lot of labor to push past the quick, comfortable anger that I get seeing Beyonce wearing a sari, and to reason out why it's problematic for her to do that while I still ask white America to include and accept me and my culture culture within their own? And the answer to that is difficult and complicated. The first part of it is that culture is a vessel. It's a vessel for visibility. It's a vessel for actualization, for engaging with other people in a shared humanity. When a dominant group cuts me off from my culture, like they did for the majority of my childhood and for a lot of other South Asian Americans' childhoods through stereotypes, mockery, racist bullying, they're cutting me off from a piece of my humanity. The second part is that culture within society, particularly in art and media, is a relatively finite space. That space is where people like me can use art to heal damaged relationships to our identities as Americans and immigrants. In an American culture where being overtly South Asian is finally less stigmatized and more celebrated in the melting pot, I want a piece of that space, not necessarily for me, but for people like me, where people who look like me can be vindicated and seen in our cultural identities. And
I think the one argument that I hear, I don't know if this is much a cultural appropriation argument, but I talked about that in the Ariana Grande thing. The one thing that I can understand is like, let's say that you have some minority culture that's like completely and totally fucking oppressed and fucked, and like some like majority group comes in, borrows a bunch of aspects from that culture, and then goes and sells it and makes a fuck ton of money off of it, while the oppressed culture is still like completely oppressed. I could see that as being like, oh, okay, that feels like pretty shitty. I can understand that 100%.
Turn around and see that space now dominated by the same groups who scored their social points by devaluing me for that very culture, it feels really shitty. Especially when our parents are often far more wowed by two white guys singing Punak Tunak Tun than by my cousin's Carnatic music recital. And if that's my reality, where my primary stake in cultural inclusion starts and ends at my mental health, I can't begin to imagine what it's like to be someone in a truly immiserated community who sees art as their only marketable value to society, who adheres to and works at their craft only to see their perceived colonizers.
Because I'm putting 100%.
Destiny goes on to highlight how
Have a
thoroughly
good
we fucked up the
weekend.
semantics of this discussion by making a point that I'd 100% agree on, if we'd been clear on the terminology of this discussion from the get-go.
I think cultural appropriation. Here, let's get hot here. Let's get closer to the center of the blast. I think cultural appropriation is a good thing, okay? You want white people to stop hating dreadlocks? Well, as soon as they all start fucking wearing dreadlocks, they'll probably stop hating it, all right? There you go. You know how white people became cool with fucking rappers and shit wearing jewelry? It's when they all started wearing fucking earrings and shit, all right? There you go.
And this is where we get to the distinction between cultural appropriation and cultural exchange. But before I get into that, I want to be totally fair and show a clip that suggests to me that if we frame the conversation properly in a way that I think more closely reflects academic critiques of cultural appropriation as I understand them, Destiny and I probably don't disagree on all that much. But I'll leave that in his court.
Man, we're really pushing the limits of what we can call a tan here, huh?
Sorry, it's a little bit further in.
So if you are going to take up some space and do some black stuff, you better give some black folks some platforms. Citation is a critical part of my feminist ethic, and I am glad
Stop
that
stuffing
Ariana
your
Grande
fat
is
fucking
doing
mouth.
that. Clearly,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that if you're like heavily, so one thing, this is the only part of like the cultural appropriation.
Oh god, I'm looping. I think I just said this.
Argument that I can kind of buy into is that like if there is a certain culture that's ultra heavily giga oppressed and super fucked, and then somebody else comes in from like a majority class, copies everything from it, and starts making millions off of it, and the other people are still fucked, I could see that and be like, wait a second, hold on, fuck you, bro. Like I could understand that 100%.
From everything that I understand, and I could be wrong, this is almost verbatim the academic critique of cultural appropriation. Not that white people should...
I hate these conversation topics because so if that is the main critique, what he's saying, which academically speaking is probably true, I agree with that 100%. I definitely can empathize with that. What I don't like are people getting up in arms because some white girl wants to give a fucking yoga class at a college campus, okay? Fuck you, all right? But like for this kind of shit, like for instance, if you take like mainstream like pop figures that are just stealing from cultures that are perpetually fucked throughout all of time and will remain fucked even after they've made their millions off of said culture, that's like some bullshit. But when people are like, that girl wore a kimono to fucking prom or whatever, like, dude, come on, fuck off. Or like, or you know, like, oh, that girl wants to teach yoga. Like, really? Come on, dude. Why does my internet lag sometimes? Oh, maybe if we all spam cucks together. We're gonna turn this way the fuck down. Literal Twitter nobodies? Unfortunately, I wish that was the case, but I don't think that's true. Like, for instance, that yoga class, that got pulled from that school. I'd have to go and look at it, or whatever. I don't remember. This is a while ago, to be fair, and this might be just be a one-off. But I remember like this class actually got like canceled. Like they weren't allowed to do it or something. I think the university said they weren't going to host it or whatever, because of the like backlash. I was going to say the outpouring of hatred, but the backlash from it.
Should not engage in other cultures, but simply that inclusion of artists and tradespeople from those cultures should be prioritized in that process, so that our visibility runs parallel to that of our culture, and we can use that space to humanize and actualize ourselves. There's a reason that Elvis is accused of looting black culture, but the Beatles are not accused of looting India. The reason, largely, is that the Beatles made Ravi Shankar an integral part of their art and artistic development, and they brought him before an audience that would never have engaged with Indian classical music otherwise. Note that there are other critiques of British invasion music appropriating black popular culture that I do not consider myself qualified to discuss in depth, but will note are there and encourage you to research yourself. This principle of inclusion is crucial for opportunity and access to black, indigenous, and oppressed caste Asian communities.
And to some level of authenticity as well. Like if you're going to showcase somebody else's culture, but you're doing it in the most whitewashed way possible, right? Arguably, you're not even necessarily helping to get broader inclusion of the people whose culture you're borrowing from for whatever you're doing. I can agree with this point.
But also, if only so that my privileged but still dehumanizing experience of Kenneth and Harold, not their real names, spending every game of Super Smash Bros. Talking about my fucking reset button isn't something that the version of me growing up in 2023 should ever have to contend with. So my response to Destiny? Maybe the part of cultural appropriation on which you and I agree isn't as limited as Tumblr might lead us to believe. Being very wary of saying no true Scotsman, or on the other hand invalidating the pain and anger that leads my siblings to make arguments I don't necessarily agree with, I would dare suggest this is the actual focus you will see placed on cultural appropriation in publication and academia, and that you may better benefit.
I wish that it was. It doesn't feel like that's the public... It doesn't feel like that's the public conversation about it, though. I think the black lady that we listened to that talked about the Ariana Grande thing, I feel like I agreed with most of what she said. Felt like, generally speaking, like most of what she said. But, man, I guess, like, the academic conversations are very far away from, like, the public and social conversations sometimes, unfortunately. But, like, insofar as the other points go, like, I think there is, like, a lot of valid room to have a conversation about, like, oh, cool, like, here's something from this culture that's really popular now in this culture. Like, oh, shit, that's fucking awesome. Like, you know, like, who made it popular? Oh, this group of, like, all white people. Oh, well, okay, I guess that's cool. Well, like, did they plug any artists, or did you check out anybody else? Oh, yeah, there's other white people doing it now, too. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Like, I can understand that. That's definitely kind of shitty.
Fit the conversation by treating it as such. And I get that it's hard to ask clarifying questions about a nuanced topic and getting back what feels like oftentimes rushed or unsatisfactory answers. But I'm sure you have a very solid understanding of how difficult it can be to have rational conversation about what feels like your own humanity. That's basically my 2 cents on the topic. And if you're wondering if I'm brave enough to discuss this in person, let me show you a clip of Destiny faced up against a true intellectual heavyweight.
One empirical thing I'm aware of. Have you seen anything about the United Kingdom?
Like the country? Thanks for giving me attention. If you liked the video, be sure to...
Wait.
The country?
Like... One thing I'm aware of. Have you seen any...
Intellectual heavyweight.
One empirical thing I'm aware of. Have you seen anything about the United Kingdom?
Like the country? Thanks for giving me attention. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're thinking of leaving a mean comment, know that I stream live to Twitch, weekdays, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can come over, leave it in person. Debate me, coward.
There you go. Okay, good job.